The world seemed to tilt on its axis the moment she spoke those words. My own mother, the woman who taught me about unconditional love and the importance of family, had just delivered a blow that felt like a physical wound. "We don't need you to come this Christmas," she'd said, her voice devoid of any warmth, any hint of the affection I'd always taken for granted. The air in my apartment grew thick, each breath a struggle as I tried to process the casual cruelty in her tone. It felt like a carefully placed dagger, aimed directly at the heart of the family I'd always strived to hold together. If you have a mother who means the world to you, subscribe now to show your love. For years, I, Bella, had been the invisible architect of our family's holiday traditions, the meticulous planner, the tireless decorator, the one who ensured every detail was perfect, every present thoughtfully chosen, every gathering a seamless tapestry of joy and togetherness. I spent countless hours crafting the perfect Christmas, orchestrating every detail from the tree trimming to the festive feast. I poured my heart and soul into making sure everyone felt loved and cherished, especially my mother, always seeking her approval, her appreciation. But now, hearing those words, I realized the depth of my delusion. The truth was a cold, hard slap in the face. I was expendable. My efforts were not valued, my presence not needed. To them, I was simply a cog in the machine, easily replaced, easily forgotten. The thought stung, a raw, burning ache that settled deep in my chest. I tried to reason with myself, to find some logical explanation for her callousness. Perhaps she was stressed, overwhelmed, or simply having a bad day. But deep down, I knew there was more to it than that. A darkness had been brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect family for a long time, and now it was finally spilling over. My brother, the golden child, could do no wrong. He was constantly bailed out, his mistakes always excused. I, on the other hand, was held to impossible standards, my every flaw magnified under a harsh, unforgiving light. And now, it seemed, the culmination of years of subtle favoritism had reached its breaking point. The injustice of it all threatened to consume me. The countless sacrifices I had made, the dreams I had deferred, all for the sake of my family, now felt like a cruel joke. I stayed silent, not because I accepted her decision, but because a cold, calculating fury had begun to take root within me. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. But they were wrong, so very wrong. The phone call ended, leaving a silence so profound it seemed to vibrate through the very walls of my apartment. I replayed the conversation in my mind, each word a fresh cut, each pause a confirmation of my mother's cold indifference. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal and resentment. And then, as the shock began to subside, a flicker of something else ignited within me. It wasn't sadness or even anger, but something far more dangerous, a quiet, resolute determination. I would not be dismissed. I would not be erased. I would not allow them to continue to take me for granted. I knew in that moment that everything was about to change. The carefully constructed facade of our perfect family was about to crumble, and I was going to be the one holding the wrecking ball. I began to quietly investigate the real reason I was disinvited from Christmas, and that's when I made a dark discovery. My mother had taken my college fund, an account that had been growing since I was a small child, and she used it to bail my brother out of some gambling debt. She didn't think I would find out. She thought I was too busy planning their Christmas party. That's when I knew they would all pay. The person I trusted most was one of them. My father, a man I had always viewed as a source of unwavering support and guidance, had known about the stolen college fund all along. He had stood by silently, complicit in my mother's deception, betraying my trust in the most profound way imaginable. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, leaving me reeling with a mixture of shock, anger, and a deep, aching sense of loss. It felt like the foundation of my world had crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me stranded in a desolate landscape of broken promises and shattered illusions. I had always believed that my parents were different, that they held themselves to a higher standard of integrity and honesty. But now, I saw them for what they truly were: flawed, selfish individuals who were willing to sacrifice my happiness for the sake of their golden child. The pain was almost unbearable, but beneath the surface, a cold, steely resolve began to solidify. I would not let them break me. I would not let them define me. I would not allow them to get away with their betrayal. I began to meticulously plan my next move, channeling my pain and anger into a carefully calculated strategy. I knew that exposing their deceit would be a risky endeavor, but I was determined to see justice served, no matter the cost. I started to take notes of all the years of emotional abuse, all the holidays I single-handedly put together, and even made copies of financial documents I happened to have access to. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, a crushing burden that stole my sleep and poisoned my waking hours. Every attempt to find solace, to distract myself from the gnawing pain, proved futile. Memories of happier times, of family gatherings filled with laughter and love, now felt like cruel taunts, reminders of what I had lost. The image of my mother's cold, indifferent eyes haunted my dreams, while the sound of my father's silence echoed in my ears. I tried to reason with them, to understand their actions, to salvage what was left of our relationship, but my efforts were met with resistance, denial, and a chilling lack of remorse. Each conversation left me feeling more defeated, more alone, more convinced that the family I had cherished was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. The injustice of it all simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt at any moment. I found myself replaying the events leading up to my disinvitation from Christmas, searching for clues, for answers, for some explanation that would make sense of their callous behavior. The more I scrutinized the past, the more I realized that this wasn't an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of years of subtle favoritism, of unspoken resentments, of a deep-seated imbalance within our family dynamic. My brother, the golden child, had always been given preferential treatment, his mistakes excused, his accomplishments celebrated, while I was held to impossible standards, my flaws magnified, my efforts overlooked. It was as if I was living in a shadow, constantly striving to earn their approval, yet never quite measuring up. The realization was a painful one, but it also fueled my determination to fight back, to reclaim my voice, to expose the truth, no matter the consequences. Sleepless nights became the norm, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge, of justice, of retribution. I imagined confronting them, laying bare their deceit, and watching as their carefully constructed world crumbled around them. But I knew that revenge was a dish best served cold, and that a carefully calculated plan was essential to ensure my success. I started documenting everything, every instance of emotional abuse, every financial discrepancy, every broken promise. I meticulously gathered evidence, building a case against them, preparing for the day when I would finally unleash my fury. The weight of the secret I was carrying was almost unbearable, but I refused to break. I refused to let them see my pain. I would become the master of my own destiny, the architect of their downfall. My apartment transformed into a war room, files stacked high, notes plastered on the walls, each one a reminder of their betrayal, each one fueling my resolve. I spent hours researching legal loopholes, consulting with financial advisors, and strategizing my next move. The once warm and inviting space now felt cold and sterile, a reflection of the emptiness that had taken root in my heart. I isolated myself from friends and colleagues, afraid that my anger and resentment would spill over, betraying my carefully constructed facade. I became a recluse, consumed by my quest for revenge, sacrificing everything in its pursuit. The once vibrant and optimistic young woman had transformed into a calculating strategist, her heart hardened, her spirit fueled by a burning desire for justice. I knew that I was walking a dangerous path, that the pursuit of revenge could consume me, but I was willing to risk it all. They had taken everything from me, my family, my trust, my sense of self-worth, and I would not rest until they had paid the price. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and still I continued to gather evidence, to refine my plan, to prepare for the day when I would finally confront them. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, a crushing burden that stole my sleep and poisoned my waking hours. My attempts to mend the broken fences of our family were met with an unexpected wall of resistance, each interaction leaving me more battered and bruised than the last. I tried to speak to my mother, to understand the root of her resentment, but she dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand, accusing me of being overly sensitive, of imagining things. My father, once my confidant and guide, remained stubbornly silent, his eyes averted, his words carefully chosen to avoid any real confrontation. It was as if they had erected an invisible barrier around themselves, protecting themselves from the consequences of their actions, refusing to acknowledge the pain they had inflicted. The more I tried to reach them, the more they retreated, creating a chasm between us that seemed impossible to bridge. I began to question my own sanity, wondering if I had somehow misconstrued the events, if I was exaggerating their cruelty. But then I would remember the stolen college fund, the years of subtle favoritism, the constant feeling of being overlooked and undervalued, and my resolve would return, stronger than ever. I sought the advice of therapists and counselors, hoping to find some way to cope with the emotional turmoil, to navigate the treacherous waters of family dysfunction. But their words of wisdom felt hollow, their suggestions impractical, their understanding limited. They couldn't comprehend the depth of my pain, the extent of their betrayal, the magnitude of the injustice I had suffered. I felt like I was trapped in a maze, endlessly searching for a way out, but finding only dead ends and false promises. The weight of their actions began to manifest in physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, and a persistent sense of fatigue. I lost my appetite, my hair began to thin, and dark circles formed beneath my eyes. I was slowly deteriorating, consumed by the emotional poison that had been injected into my life. Yet, I refused to succumb. I refused to let them win.
I would use their betrayal as fuel, transforming my pain into power, my anger into action. I spent countless hours poring over legal documents, researching my rights, and seeking advice from attorneys. I discovered that my mother's actions were not only morally reprehensible, but also potentially illegal. The realization fueled my determination to seek justice, to hold them accountable for their crimes. I knew that it would be a long and arduous battle, but I was prepared to fight until the very end. The sleepless nights continued, my mind racing with strategies and counter-strategies, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. I had become a warrior, preparing for the ultimate battle, the battle for my life, my dignity, and my future. The day I received the official letter from the university denying my appeal to reinstate my scholarship felt like the final nail in the coffin. It wasn't just about the money, though the thought of the crushing debt I would now incur sent a fresh wave of panic through me. It was about the future that had been so carelessly stolen from me, the dreams that had been so brutally crushed. I had always been a stellar student, dedicating myself to my studies, sacrificing social life and personal pursuits in pursuit of academic excellence. The scholarship was a reward for my hard work, a validation of my potential, a symbol of hope for a brighter tomorrow. Now it was gone, snatched away by the selfish actions of my own mother and the complicit silence of my father. The letter mocked me from my desk. I felt the world closing in, the walls of my apartment shrinking, the air growing thick and suffocating. I was trapped, suffocated by their greed, their betrayal, their utter disregard for my well-being. My vision blurred, and the glass I was holding shattered in my hand, sending shards of glass and crimson droplets scattering across the floor. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the emotional agony that was tearing me apart. I sank to my knees, sobbing uncontrollably, the broken pieces of glass mirroring the shattered fragments of my life. I stayed there for what felt like hours, lost in a sea of despair, unable to see any way out of the darkness. They had taken everything from me, my family, my future, my sense of self-worth. I was nothing more than a pawn in their twisted game, a sacrifice to their golden child, a casualty of their selfish desires.
As the sun began to set, casting long, ominous shadows across my apartment, a strange calm settled over me. The tears had dried, the sobs had subsided, and a cold, steely resolve had taken their place. I was done feeling sorry for myself. I was done being a victim. I would not let them define me. I would not let them break me. I would rise from the ashes of their betrayal, stronger and more determined than ever before. I carefully cleaned up the broken glass, bandaging my bleeding hand with a steady hand. Each action was deliberate, each movement precise, each decision fueled by a burning desire for justice. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Her eyes were hardened, her face gaunt, her spirit scarred. But beneath the surface, a spark of defiance flickered, a promise of retribution, a vow to make them pay for what they had done. I would become their worst nightmare. I would expose their lies, reveal their secrets, and bring their carefully constructed world crashing down around them. I would use their own weapons against them, turning their greed and selfishness into their undoing. My silence had been their greatest weapon, my willingness to forgive their greatest advantage. But those days were over. I would no longer be silent. I would no longer forgive. I would become the architect of their downfall, the instrument of their destruction. The first step was to gather as much evidence as possible, to document every instance of their deceit, every financial discrepancy, every act of emotional manipulation. I meticulously combed through old emails, bank statements, and personal journals, searching for any shred of information that could be used against them. I discovered a hidden account my father had been using to funnel money to my brother, a slush fund filled with ill-gotten gains and shady dealings. I uncovered a series of emails between my mother and various creditors, detailing my brother's mounting debts and her desperate attempts to bail him out. I even found a recording of a conversation between my parents in which they openly discussed their plan to steal my college fund and justify their actions with the excuse that my brother needed it more than I did. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and irrefutable. It was a treasure trove of ammunition, a weapon I could use to obliterate their carefully constructed lies. As I delved deeper into their world of deceit, I began to see a pattern, a web of interconnected lies and betrayals that extended far beyond my own family. My father's business dealings were shady, his investments risky, his ethics questionable. My mother's social life was built on a foundation of gossip, manipulation, and backstabbing. They were both masters of deception, skilled at hiding their true selves behind a facade of respectability and charm. The more I learned, the more disgusted I became. These were not the parents I had thought I knew.
These were monsters, capable of anything, driven by greed, selfishness, and a complete lack of empathy. I knew that exposing them would be a risky endeavor, that it would likely destroy our family and shatter my own life in the process. But I no longer cared. I had reached a point of no return. I was consumed by a burning desire for justice, a need to see them held accountable for their actions, a determination to reclaim my stolen future. The planning had begun in earnest. They would all pay. I knew that simply presenting the evidence wouldn't be enough. My parents were skilled manipulators, adept at twisting the truth and playing the victim. I needed to create a situation where they couldn't deny their actions, where their lies would be exposed for all to see. The idea came to me during one of my sleepless nights, a public forum, a stage where I could present my evidence and confront them in front of an audience of their peers, their friends, their colleagues. The annual charity gala they hosted every year was the perfect venue. It was a lavish affair, attended by the city's elite, a showcase of their wealth and philanthropy. It was also an event they meticulously controlled, ensuring that every detail reflected their carefully cultivated image. To hijack their perfect evening, to turn their stage into a courtroom, would be the ultimate act of revenge. I started by subtly infiltrating their inner circle, befriending their closest confidants, attending their exclusive parties, and learning their secrets. I played the part of the dutiful daughter, the supportive sister, the loyal friend. I smiled, I laughed, I nodded, all the while gathering information, planting seeds of doubt, and manipulating their perceptions. It was a delicate dance, a high-stakes game of deception, but I was determined to win. I needed access to the gala's AV system, to the microphones, to the screens, to the very infrastructure of their carefully controlled environment. I targeted the event's tech director, a young, ambitious man, eager to prove himself. I showered him with compliments, praised his work, and subtly hinted at my dissatisfaction with the gala's current format. I suggested that it needed a refresh, a modern twist, a shocking reveal that would capture the attention of the city.
He was intrigued, eager to impress me, and willing to bend the rules to make my vision a reality. I convinced him to give me access to the AV system under the guise of testing new presentation software. He handed me the keys, completely unaware of the true purpose of my mission.
Inside the AV room, I meticulously planned my attack. I created a slideshow presentation, a chronological timeline of their deceit, complete with incriminating emails, bank statements, and audio recordings. I enhanced the audio, cleaned up the images, and added captions to ensure that every piece of evidence was crystal clear. I even consulted with a forensic accountant to analyze their financial records and create a visual representation of their fraudulent activities. I wanted to leave no room for doubt, no opportunity for denial. But I needed a fail-safe. I installed hidden cameras throughout the ballroom, strategically positioned to capture their reactions, their expressions, their every move. I wanted to document their humiliation, their shame, their utter defeat. The cameras were small, discreet, and virtually undetectable. I disguised them as smoke detectors, as flower arrangements, as decorative ornaments. I even managed to plant one inside the centerpiece on their table, ensuring a close-up view of their faces when the truth was revealed. The risk of getting caught was immense, but the potential reward was worth it. I knew that if my plan succeeded, it would not only expose their lies, but also destroy their reputation, their social standing, and their financial security. The gala was scheduled for December 23rd. The date loomed large in my mind, a countdown to the moment of truth. I spent the weeks leading up to the event meticulously rehearsing my presentation, practicing my speech, and fine-tuning my plan. I knew that I had to remain calm, composed, and in control, even when confronted with their inevitable rage and denial. I visualized the scene in my mind, imagining their faces as the truth was revealed, savoring the moment of their downfall. I even practiced different scenarios, anticipating their possible reactions, and developing strategies to counter their every move. As the date drew nearer, the tension became almost unbearable. The weight of the secret I was carrying threatened to crush me. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid that my parents would discover my plan and sabotage my efforts. I knew that they were suspicious, that they sensed something was amiss. They had started paying closer attention to my movements, monitoring my phone calls, and questioning my whereabouts. But I refused to let them intimidate me. I remained calm, composed, and outwardly supportive, all the while secretly preparing for their downfall. 2 days before the gala, my mother called me, inviting me to a pre-gala luncheon with a tone that dripped with saccharine sweetness. I knew it was a trap, an attempt to gauge my intentions and uncover my secrets. But I accepted the invitation, determined to play along. During the luncheon, my mother subtly grilled me about my life, my career, and my relationships. She pried into my finances, questioned my friendships, and even made veiled references to my past. I answered her questions carefully, revealing nothing, concealing my true intentions behind a mask of polite indifference. She seemed frustrated by my evasiveness. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pursed. I could sense that she suspected something, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As the luncheon drew to a close, she leaned in close, her voice low and menacing. "I know you're up to something," she whispered. "I can feel it. But whatever it is, you better be careful. You don't want to make me angry." I smiled sweetly, maintaining my composure. "Don't worry, Mother," I replied. "I would never do anything to upset you." But inside, my heart was pounding, my adrenaline surging. The game had begun. The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, my body trembling. The weight of the impending confrontation was almost too much to bear. I spent the night reviewing my plan, double-checking my evidence, and preparing myself for the inevitable fallout. I knew that after tonight, my life would never be the same. I would likely lose my family, my friends, and my social standing, but I was prepared to sacrifice everything for the sake of justice. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, I felt a surge of determination wash over me. The time for planning was over. The time for action had arrived. I spent the morning meticulously preparing for the gala. I chose a dress that was elegant yet understated, a symbol of my strength and resilience. I styled my hair in a simple yet sophisticated manner, a reflection of my inner composure. I applied my makeup carefully, concealing the dark circles beneath my eyes and accentuating my best features. I wanted to look my best,
Not for them, but for myself. I wanted to show them that even after everything they had done, I was still standing tall, still strong, still beautiful. As I stepped into the ballroom that evening, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The room was filled with the city's elite, all dressed in their finest attire, sipping champagne and making small talk. My parents were standing near the entrance, greeting their guests with forced smiles and practiced charm. I walked towards them, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands trembling slightly. As I approached, my mother's eyes narrowed, her lips tightened. She knew. She could feel it. The storm was coming. "You look beautiful, dear," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Thank you, Mother," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "You look lovely as well." I knew that these were the last polite words we would ever exchange. The stage was set. The curtain was about to rise. The final act was about to begin. The gala was in full swing, a dizzying spectacle of wealth and superficiality. I navigated the crowded ballroom, a ghost in their gilded world, my every step deliberate, my purpose unwavering. My parents, oblivious to the impending storm, continued to play their roles, basking in the adoration of their peers, their smiles masking the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. I watched them closely, studying their every move, memorizing their expressions, savoring the final moments of their reign. The tech director, eager to please, approached me with a nervous smile. "Everything is ready," he whispered, his eyes darting around the room. "The presentation software is loaded, the AV system is calibrated, and the hidden cameras are recording." I nodded, offering him a reassuring smile. "Excellent," I replied. "You've done a wonderful job." He beamed with pride, completely unaware that he was an unwitting accomplice in their downfall. It was time. I made my way to the stage, my heart pounding in my chest, my palms sweating. The band was playing a lively tune, the guests were laughing and chatting, the atmosphere was festive and carefree. But beneath the surface, a sense of unease was growing, a feeling that something was about to happen, a premonition of impending disaster. I approached the microphone, tapping it lightly to get the attention of the crowd. The music faded, the chatter subsided, all eyes turned towards me. My parents, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, exchanged a worried glance. They knew. The moment had arrived. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice calm and steady, projecting an air of confidence that belied the turmoil within. "I would like to thank you all for coming tonight to support this important cause. As you know, my parents have been hosting this gala for many years, and they have always been committed to giving back to the community." I paused, taking a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to come. "But tonight," I continued, my voice hardening, "I have a different kind of presentation for you. A presentation that will reveal the truth about my parents, the truth about their lies, their deceit, and their betrayal." A gasp rippled through the crowd. My parents' faces turned white, their eyes wide with horror. They knew. The moment had arrived. I pressed a button on the remote, and the slideshow began, the first image flashing across the giant screen behind me. A photo of my father's hidden bank account, the one he had been using to funnel money to my brother. The crowd gasped again, murmurs of shock and disbelief spreading through the room. My father lunged towards the stage, his face contorted with rage, his fists clenched. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, his voice trembling with anger. "This is a lie. This is slander." I ignored him, continuing with my presentation, revealing email after email, bank statement after bank statement, audio recording after audio recording, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. The hidden cameras captured every reaction, every expression, every whispered comment. The crowd was mesmerized, horrified, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. My mother stood frozen in place, her face a mask of shock and disbelief, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. My brother, who was also in attendance, slunked into the shadows, trying to disappear from view, his face flushed with shame. As the presentation reached its climax, I revealed the recording of my parents discussing their plan to steal my college fund, their callous disregard for my future. The crowd erupted in outrage, their anger directed at my parents, their sympathy directed at me. My father, desperate to regain control, rushed onto the stage, grabbing the microphone from my hand. "Don't listen to her," he shouted, his voice hoarse with desperation. "She's crazy. She's jealous. She's trying to destroy us." But it was too late. The truth had been revealed. The damage had been done. Their carefully constructed lies had been exposed for all to see. I smiled, a cold, steely smile, the smile of a woman who had finally achieved justice. "You're right, Father," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I am trying to destroy you, because you destroyed me first." Just then, as my father tried to grab me, the tech director, bless his naive heart, thinking he was adding to my shocking reveal, triggered a pre-programmed spotlight. But it wasn't just a spotlight. It illuminated a massive projection screen that descended from the ceiling, displaying a live feed from all the hidden cameras at once. Every whispered conversation, every horrified glance, every twitch of guilt on my parents' faces was broadcast for the entire ballroom to see. And then the audio played, a compilation of the most incriminating snippets of their conversations, amplified for maximum impact. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. My mother started to sob, a pathetic, theatrical display of remorse that fooled no one. My father, defeated and humiliated, simply stood there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. He looked like a broken man. The silence was shattered by a single sharp cry. It was my brother. He had seen something on the screen, something that broke him completely.
The camera focused on him, capturing his face as he stared, transfixed at the image. It was a close-up of my mother's phone, displaying a text message she had sent just moments before. "It's done. He's out of the picture. You're next." The message was addressed to my brother's business partner, the one who had been threatening to expose his own shady dealings. The implication was clear. My mother had arranged to silence the partner permanently. My brother, realizing the full extent of his mother's depravity, collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The police arrived, sirens blaring, lights flashing, drawn by the commotion. They waded through the crowd, their eyes scanning the scene, their hands resting on their weapons. The ballroom was in chaos, a swirling vortex of shock, anger, and disbelief. As the police approached my parents, my mother shrieked, pointing at me. "She did this," she screamed. "She set us up. Arrest her." But the police ignored her, their attention focused on the damning evidence that was playing out on the giant screen. They cuffed my parents, leading them away in handcuffs, their faces pale and drawn. As they were escorted out of the ballroom, my father turned to me, his eyes filled with hatred. "You haven't won," he hissed. "This isn't over." I just smiled. It was over for them, but for me, it was just the beginning. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. My parents, stripped of their wealth and social standing, looked like shadows of their former selves. The trial was a formality. The evidence was overwhelming, the public's opinion already decided. They were found guilty on all charges: fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. As the judge read the sentence, a collective gasp filled the room. Decades in prison. Their empire, their legacy, their freedom, all gone. My brother, facing his own legal battles, avoided my gaze. He knew his life was irrevocably changed, tainted by his parents' actions. The news spread like wildfire, shattering their social circle. Friends turned their backs, business partners severed ties, charities returned their donations. Their name, once synonymous with power and prestige, became a symbol of shame and disgrace. Their mansions stood empty, their cars were repossessed, their artwork was auctioned off. They lost everything. Even their family turned against them. My aunt, who had always been envious of my mother's success, seized the opportunity to publicly denounce them, eager to distance herself from their downfall. My cousins, who had once fawned over my parents' wealth, now pretended not to know them. The only visitors they received in prison were their lawyers, and even they seemed eager to wrap things up as quickly as possible. My parents were completely isolated, abandoned by everyone they had ever known. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a sense of detached satisfaction washing over me. I had achieved my goal.
I had exposed their lies, destroyed their reputation, and brought them to justice. But as I looked at their broken faces, I realized that their punishment was far greater than any prison sentence. They had lost everything that had ever mattered to them: their wealth, their status, their family, their freedom. They were left with nothing but their guilt and their shame. I moved away, selling the house that held so many painful memories. I started a new life, far away from the city where I had grown up. I focused on my career, building a successful business based on honesty and integrity. I surrounded myself with genuine friends, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I had. I found peace and happiness in my new life, but the scars of the past remained. I would never forget what my parents had done to me, the pain they had caused, the betrayal I had suffered, but I refused to let their actions define me. I had emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient. I had learned that family isn't always blood, that trust can be broken, and that justice is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Years later, I received a letter from my father. It was a rambling, incoherent mess of apologies, regrets, and accusations. He blamed me for everything that had happened, claiming that I had ruined his life. He begged me to forgive him, to visit him in prison, to help him get out. I read the letter with a sense of cold detachment. I felt no sympathy for him, no desire to reconcile. He had made his choices, and he had to live with the consequences. I tore up the letter and threw it away. I was done with him. I was done with them. I learned that my mother left this world a few years later, alone and forgotten in her prison cell. My father followed soon after, his spirit broken, his body ravaged by disease. Their story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that greed and dishonesty always lead to destruction. Some people told me that I should have forgiven them, that I should have moved on with my life. But I knew that forgiveness wasn't always possible, that some wounds never truly heal. I had done what I had to do to protect myself, to seek justice, to reclaim my life. I had no regrets. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's the fire that burns away the lies and reveals the truth. It's the force that rights the wrongs and restores balance to the world. It's the only way to truly move on. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.